Pleasure today to have Maddy Schafer here with us, and Maddy is a coach, and she's going to tell us about her coaching work that she does with people to help them get through life. And she has a very close association with the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. However, Maddy is going to talk about her things today. She's going to talk about stuff that that she's got to share with us, the tips and tricks and ways to manage what's going on for people in their lives. So with all the changes that have been going on in 2020, it's going to be an interesting year to look back on in the years to come.
Yes.
But there's some really cool and interesting things that Maddy's got to say about how she's helping her clients. So Maddy, welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
That's cool. So I actually lived in the same city that Maddy lives in. It's Wellington in New Zealand many years ago. So I have fond memories of the city and the place in general. So anyway, tell us about your work and what you're doing and a bit about yourself and so on, Maddy.
Okay. I'm going to start talking about my work because if I talk about me, it's just going to be this great down the Alice hole rabbit hole thing. So yeah, let's not do that. If you can find me a coaching question to answer, I'll be happy to answer it. What I do, and I'm not defined by my work, but what I love to do is I love to witness and to participate in human transformation. And my whole journey in life has really been about finding stuff that works. And, you know, when I used to write, I used to do email and blogging, marketing sort of stuff, because I write really well and I love to write, but I realized eventually that I hated doing that, so I stopped. And now I do videos, I do lives. But where was I going with that? It's gone, the thought is gone, I'm totally distracted. But the point being that I love things that work. And I like them to be repeatable. And that's what it was. When the lights are out and there's custard all over the walls and the shit's coming down and, you know, your world is coming to an end, I want things that will work then. I mean, it's great to have things that work when you're all centered and fine and there's people around to support you and everything's good. But, you know, when push really comes to shove and it's the dark night of the soul, I want something that I can go to then and that I absolutely know is going to work. Now, by work, I don't mean I push a button and kaboom, everything's gone. I mean that I know I have a model that functions and that if I do the work, if I work the formula, if I work the process, if I'm determined, if I apply myself, particularly because now I've been doing what I'm doing for a little while and I have results, oh my God, of the sort that I never used to be able to get. Well, I know that I can do that again, even when I'm scared, even when I can't see how this is going to work out okay. I actually know beyond my fear that it will. I have no idea how. I have no idea when. I'm just getting a little bit better at dealing with the unknown. Which, of course, right now, everybody's very aware of, oh, my God, you know, familiar past, predictable future. What the hell are they? They're gone. can't predict anything really. And, you know, that whole uncertainty thing is really big whenever it comes up because it scares us, because the things that we rely upon to tell us who we are and what to expect and how we're going to feel, which is actually what the unknown is about. If you think of a thing and you know how you feel about it, it's known to you. If you don't know how you feel about it, it's unknown, and it's automatically scary because that's just the programming that we have in our evolutionary brains. So the unknown is automatically frightening, and people think that means it's bad. No, it's just unfamiliar. But, you know, we've had a lot of our familiar things ripped away. And, you know, people say, what do you think about COVID-19? The politically correct answer is, oh my God, it's awful. I can't say that. It's just, what's that saying? It's an amazing opportunity disguised as an insoluble problem, you know. And that's what I think it is. Because it creates so much chaos and so much disruption, and I don't mean that it's not hurting, because it is hurting, but it disrupts the familiar. It breaks us out of our patterns. It actually breaks us out of the habitual self that you think, oh yeah, this is who I am. Suddenly, boom, that habitual self is gone, and you see yourself with different eyes because you've been yanked out of your familiar life. And that creates an opportunity for something to really change.
Okay.
It's a huge consciousness shift. See, I rave. Thank you.
Yeah. But tell me how you know, does this relate to stripping away delusions? So obviously the familiar past and you know, the predictable future is all based on filters and that kind of stuff. And I'm just interested in your view of the delusional sort of constructs that are sitting in there, because any kind of future wouldn't be a problem if there were no delusions. You just accept and take what was going.
Can you, I know this is going to sound silly, but can you please give me an example of what you think of, what you mean when you say delusions? Because I have a feeling that what you mean and what I mean are two different things, and we'll go off on two different pages. So help me understand the question before I try to answer it.
So what I'm interested in is this notion of, you know, how you feel about the future. So what it is that you are expecting in a given circumstance. So
expectations.
You know, so like it's and for me the delusions are around how I'm actually processing what it is that would be experienced. So like what the reality is. So the reality is some kind of unfiltered perception. And what I'm interested in is your view of how these filters, which actually cloud and distort your perception, are intersecting and interfering with what's going forward.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Now I understand. I'm not sure what word I'd use for that, because it's, you know, delusion is a label, and it's as good as anything. Now I know what you mean. So maybe I'll just use an example, and it was a question that I addressed in one of my recent lives. One of my clients actually, who's in my group, in my coaching group. Beautiful man. Oh my God, I've watched him up level. He's amazing. And he asked a question, and he didn't ask a question. He made a comment, and it was so valuable that I decided to address it. And what had happened was he dealt with a lot of stuff. He'd gone into his operating system and deleted a lot of old trauma. And then something happened in his workplace which brought up an old trauma. And he recognized, very, very conscious, he recognized he did the work and, you know, moving through the layers and all that stuff. But the point being that when you have those memories, the memories that are emotionally strong enough that they've branded you emotionally, and by that I mean that you have an experience, and if the amplitude of the emotion that's in the experience is strong enough, because you have an emotional reaction, your brain perks up and says, oh, hello, we're feeling different. What in the environment is responsible for that change? And it looks around, it takes a snapshot. And this is what happens, you know, PTSD and trauma and whatnot. The brain takes a snapshot of everything because it says, we have to avoid this next time. And so the person who has that thing, perhaps even buried or forgotten, the brain has all of those neurological networks there. And when there's something in the environment that reminds the brain, never mind the conscious mind, the conscious mind is doing its thing, and the unconscious mind says, oh shit, there's something that reminds me of that thing that happened all that time ago. this is a predator, this is going to kill me, I need to respond like that. And you get this. So that's what happened for him, really. And he spent the day wrestling with it until he had some space to do the work to, deal with it properly. But the point being that is really how we perceive the future, through the lens of the past. Because we see an unknown, and there's something going on, or many things are going on in our environment where that unknown has destabilized us and we don't feel secure because the old patterns aren't there anymore. The brain is not looking around and saying, well, I know this, and I know this, and I know this, and I know this, and that's all cool. There's, oh shit, I don't know what that means, but it reminds me of this awful thing that happened to me 30 years ago. That's dangerous, and now I'm in stress. So the brain operates on pattern recognition. It associates things. The two laws of neuroscience: association and repetition. You learn by repetition, you remember by association, and that's how it works. So I think maybe that's as simple as I want to make it, that the brain perceives something in an unknown, and it's unknown. So it goes hunting through its files for something that matches it. And if that something that matches it happens to be something that is associated with pain, then we automatically assume, either consciously or unconsciously, and a lot of it happens without us noticing, that there's a problem on the horizon. And then, if it's strong enough, not only do you have this sort of, the brain's made a connection, but then that emotional amplitude, which might be 30 years ago or last week, depending on when it is, those synapses fire, you get neurotransmitters, you get neuropeptides, you get a hormonal expression, and boom, you're having an emotion. And you think, why the hell am I having an anxiety attack 5 minutes ago? I was just walking down the street having a fine time. And it's because the brain is just reactivating something that happened all that time ago that you completely forgotten about. It's seen something and gone, And so I hope that makes sense. I'm being a bit dramatic, but that's broad brushstrokes how I think it works.
Yeah, look, it makes total sense to me. I have a sort of a delving question that sits in there, and the delving question that sits in there is that we've got a mass response that's going on,
yes,
amongst humanity at the moment, and which is fear-based, but leading to the anger responses to try and control the environment and all that kind of stuff. So we understand those psychological profiling, and I think most people listening will understand them as well.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, what is there in that pattern from the past? So is searching around for some sort of context for what's going on at the moment. What is it that actually makes such a universal response in the current situation that is coming from people's background? How is it that you've got such a universal experience?
I don't even think that's necessarily coming from their backgrounds or their histories or whatever, not per se. What it is the hormones of stress. When you get stressed, and people are scared, right? Mm. When you get scared, when you get hit with a bunch of adrenal hormone, what happens, the autonomic nervous system then is immediately interested in preserving the body. It's not interested in digesting a meal, so all the blood supply is taken away from digestion. It's also not interested in creativity or thinking logically, so all the blood supply goes from the frontal lobe and it ends up in the hindbrain, which is instinctual. And now you're ready to either fight an enemy or run away or freeze. That's it. And people are scared and they're living in survival. And if they're either afraid or they're angry, and all the things that come from that, or they're depressed, they feel hopeless. All of these things are emotions of survival. They're all incoherent brain states, and they don't even have to have a traumatic memory. It's just this is a disruption, and when there is a fear of what's coming next, even if you don't have some history to refer back to, particularly because other people are doing it too, and we're all wirelessly connected through the unified field. So if you're around people that are stressed, we actually have a field of frequency around us, and you can measure it. And when a person is in heart coherence and brain coherence together, it can be 9 or 10 meters wide across. It's big. But if you're in stress, you literally draw from that field of energy and turn that energy into the chemistry of the stress hormones. And the field shrinks over time if you keep doing it. And because you have less and less energy in your energetic field, and this is measured, it's not, oh, you know, the light field, the woo-woo new age stuff. This is actual fact. They've taken pictures of it. You can measure this stuff. Because that energy field is shrinking and it's all going into chemistry, which is about surviving in the external environment, that there is less and less energy available for internal things. Because, of course, it's not a time to create. It's not a time to relax and settle down and open your heart and be happy. You've got to run away from the tiger. But if you get stuck there, then the body gets stuck there, and, you know, and the emotions get stuck there, and it just becomes the habitual way that a person gets used to being, and they think it's just who they are. But it's not. Speaking from experience.
Yeah, look, experience. But the, you know, what you're talking about there is a recognition of the environment. So there's a recognition of the fear and the anger and the belligerence and all that kind of stuff actually in the environment.
Yes,
and
beyond the fact that everything's chaotic and disrupted as well. So it's a double whammy.
Yeah. And probably, you know, it would be a laugh if it wasn't for all of this emotional stuff attached to it. Yeah, the fact that people are nicking all the toilet rolls would be funny.
Oh yeah, some of it's just insane, and you could make an amazing comedy out of it. You're right. Some of it is really, you know, people going hungry, and there's a lot of drama that we could all focus on and go, oh, how awful. And I make a very concerted effort to just no. Anyway, carry on.
So we've got the perception of danger coming in through this field, as you're describing it, which is a very coherent sort of a concept. And you're seeing a mass response to it. So it's seeing literally an ancestral type of response. It is
it's evolutionary. It's just programmed that, from my perspective, it's just what our bodies are programmed to do to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and that might just be a wordy thing, because you see, when you say ancestral to me, I think something different from evolutionary. So just making the distinction, and maybe it may not be the distinction for you. So just thinking, hang on, there's a hole in there.
By ancestral, I mean, yeah, something in the genes. It's a genetic.
Oh, okay, genetic.
And so, like,
yes.
It's what gets a herd of horses to all run in the same direction. You know, like it's that sort of mass energy of let's run away from the danger. And that we've got something along those lines actually occurring from, a deep genetic predisposition.
We do have that, but I also want to say that I perceive and see and feel something else entirely is going on as well at the same time. And we get this great choice now about where we put our attention, because where you put your energy is where you put your attention is where you put your energy. And I'm totally quoting Dr. Joe Dispenza here, because it's so true. Whatever I pay attention to grows. Whatever anybody pays attention to, it grows. And so I don't look at that mass response, because that mass response is happening at the level of survival, and I'm not interested in staying there or thinking about that or interfacing with it or analysing it or say, oh, can we fix this? Can we heal this? Can we find out the deep and dark and hidden belief why it's like that? Well, we know why it's like that. The body's wired to do and be this. But I'm interested in the enormous shift in consciousness that is taking place as people choose not to do that. And they get, and I'm watching it. I'm watching it happen. And it's so exciting seeing people choose to, a different dimension, if you want to get all spiritual about it. They're choosing a different resonance. They're choosing a different frequency. They're choosing to come out of survival which means breaking the stress response. And they're choosing to become more coherent, and you see all these mass meditations happening around the planet, and you see people practicing heart coherence. There's amazing things going on. And my little, not so little, whatever, my daily, my 5 days a week lives, and, the repeats in the weekend, I'm always talking about this because it's so profoundly powerful. And I felt the changes in myself, and I see them in others, and it just lights me up. It's the reason why I came.
Oh, wonderful. So, you know, you're talking about this group of people who are waking up,
Yes.
and you know, clearly it's not everybody that's
No.
choosing to do that. And if you were to put a number on it, what would Maddy Schafer's number be on the percentage of people trying to wake up?
I have no idea, but here's the thing that I know, and this is backed up by science again. You know about the Peace Project, you know, group mass meditations, and I think that they did it in the Middle East, and on the days when the group was meditating, there were fewer deaths and there were fewer shots fired and the whole 9 yards. And the problem with that was when the Peace Project finished and the people stopped meditating, it all went back to normal. Right, but we learned, because nobody really changed. The people who were doing the fighting were influenced by the coherent field that those meditators were creating. But the people who were doing the fighting didn't experience any personal change, so there was nothing to make it stick.
Yeah.
So, but what we do know is that a comparatively small number of people becoming coherent and becoming intentional, becoming focused, and basically healing themselves and getting greater light has a really big effect. It's beyond dropping a little pebble in a lake and it disappears. It grows. And if you think about each person as being actually an expression of a fractal, okay, you know, the fractals, like, for those who think, what the hell is that? There is a fractal shape that links everything in creation together. So you see it in the spiral of a galaxy, and you see it in a rose, and you see it in the cactus, you see it in the wave of a roller in the sea. It's everywhere. It's in our, you know, the shape of our lungs and rivers and blood vessels and clouds in the sky. It's all connected. So if each person is a fractal, some fractals are really ugly, incoherent, broken things, and some fractals are very, very perfect. And what we know is that all the fractals interfere, and where there is coherence and order, if there's enough of it, if it's coherent enough and it's strong enough, it's going to override the disorder. So when you have people becoming more coherent and they can maintain that coherence, or if they lose the plot, they can get it back, there is this, it's beyond what we normally think of as a ripple effect. They actually allow other people to transform and up level, and these people don't even realize it, but after a while they say to the person, what have you done? Have you cut your hair or shaved off your moustache or changed your aftershave, or are you taking different pills? It's like, no, I didn't do anything, I just got happier. You know, this is what I see happening, and I don't know the numbers. I will tell you a little story, because it's something I'm watching, and something I'm actually just started participating in. Something Dr. Joe is doing is that, you know, we have COVID-19, right? Well, he started another bug. It's called Go Love 20. And it's this little 15-minute meditation. And when I say little, it packs a punch. It's just, oh my God, I did it this morning. It just blew my heart wide open. It's beautiful. And there's a little introduction. He explains what it's about. And the short version is that in the meditation, you let somebody into your heart, and you give them love, and you create this amazing sense and experience of love, which is really deeply moving and transformative. And the other part that you wrap around it is you connect with the person. You say, look, you know, these are all the things I love about you, and here's this meditation. If you'd like to do it and give the bug to someone else, go ahead. Now, I haven't actually done that part yet. For my own reasons, I've had to do it out of order and completely the wrong way, but, you know, whatever. The point being that I just watched a little 46 seconds that Joe put up on his page to say, hey, look, Go Love 20 has impacted 100,000 people so far. Presumably that's how many people they've had view the video or download it or whatever it is. And that's only the ones we know about. You know, there's lots of others. So people are, and it's like 15 minutes. Just about anybody can do that if you want to. You can practice this, you know, go and find it. It's the most beautiful process. And it's this beautiful way to express love. And when we generate heartfelt, elevated, loving emotions, you can't be in survival and do that. You have to open up. You have to allow yourself to get big, to, you know, to become coherent. And if people do that every day, you know, it's just huge. And so this is what I see happening. And that's just one initiative. It's just happens to be one that I'm participating in. And I'll probably do that meditation again tomorrow because it's so beautiful. But that's what I'm seeing. And those kinds of things, I mean, there's the Global Coherence Pulse, which happens once a month, and my husband and I are participating in that. Completely different kind of setup, but it's still about coherence. And for me, coherence is huge because it was and is the missing piece. I could not shift anything of importance in my life until I discovered the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, because it gave me the tools to become coherent enough to shift my deepest unconscious, not even seen, completely, Mount Everest things. Which is why I'm so profoundly grateful that he's done the work, because it works. Hell, it actually works. So, yeah. It's a long way from the question, but anyway, carry on.
No, not at all. One of the interesting things in here is this notion of how widely connected this type of coherent intention is around the world. And I saw a wonderful presentation by a Baptist minister in the south of the United States the other day.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I would normally watch. It's not, it's not really in my belief set, so on and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But I looked at it and I thought, here's somebody who's really on a path of waking up. This man is absolutely on a path of waking up.
You can feel it, yeah.
And you can see it around you all over the places that people are waking up. They're opening their eyes. And they're observing what's going on. And so the interesting thing, like if we're to talk about it as being a movement, and the reason I'm running the summit at the moment is to actually help and disseminate as much of the stuff around waking up as possible. Yeah. And what I recognize is that it's not about anybody owning a system or anybody actually knowing the answers or anything like that. It's actually about the intention to become coherent in the way that you're talking about. So this is coherent between people, and obviously to have that internal coherence. Yeah. As you know, I work with a different model to actually try and do stuff to.
Hey, it works. It works for those who resonate with it, which is fantastic.
Absolutely. And the point is that it is all the focus on coherence and so on. Why I asked the question of the percentage of people who are trying to wake up is that when I look around the community and I go up and down the street and so on and so forth, and if I open a conversation with somebody in the supermarket, which you're not supposed to do, but I do anyway.
Yeah, you can't help it, can you?
I can't, absolutely not. What I recognise is that there's flickers. There's a flicker of energy of the potential that somebody might actually view things in a different way, and they are aware of different sorts of ways of viewing the situation. But for nearly everybody, they're still completely locked in being asleep. They're absolutely locked in it. And I'm just interested in, like that type of project that you're talking about in the Middle East. And I'm aware of many of those sorts of projects that have been done all around the world. Yeah. And every one of them comes up with the same result. And the result is that a collective intention by a surprisingly few number of people can make a big difference to the environment.
Yes. Yeah.
How you go about sustaining it is another issue.
Yeah, and people have to make a real change in themselves.
And like a permanent change.
Yes.
It has to be a permanent change. And
it has to be sustainable. And you see, they have to know how, not just, that was wonderful, but how can I do that again? Mm-hmm. And that's what I, for myself, am really excited about, because I now know how to do it. I know how to induce it. I know what I need to do.
Yep.
To get into bliss, for God's sake. I can't put words on what I now experience every day. Mm-hmm. When I make love with the divine, it's insane. The states of wholeness, and I know that I've only just begun to tap this well. It's like, there's always more. And it's my path, but I know there are many others who are one way and another using the same tools to find their own wholeness. And it becomes sustainable when the person can do it themselves. Now, it's not to say that clearly I'm a coach. I like to work with people, but I don't. It's like people quite from time to time, people say, oh, do you do readings? No, I don't. I don't want to do a reading for you. I want to teach you how to find your own truth. I want you to be able to access your own guidance, your own connection, your own wholeness, your own whatever it is you want, because then you won't need me to fix you up. You can engage me to help you create, because I'm really good at that. And I'm really good at helping people sort of, it's amazing, because the more connected I've gotten to the unified field, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's just gone kaboom. I read a line on under one of my lives, someone's written something, and I just get the information about exactly what it's about. I write it and I know it's true, it's not in an instant. It blows me away. It's like, oh, really? That's what's going on. Because it's part of being connected. And that happens. But I don't want to be a reader. I want people, I want you watching to have that experience yourself, because nobody can take that away from you. You don't need to pay someone else to do it once you know how.
Maddy, we talked earlier about, what I was calling delusions, or
yes.
I think we settled on the word filters. Tell me about the operation of our intuition, because clearly,
yes.
Clearly you are becoming very, very comfortable with accessing your own intuition. But just talk a little bit about these sort of filters and the intuition.
How it works. To me, this is the question which, it's funny, synchronicity. I just answered this recently, and even more, I just saw a little 3-minute clip from Joe talking about it, and I thought, oh yeah, that's how he says it. The thing is, people often say, well, I had this gut feeling, but I don't know whether to follow it, right? It's the common problem.
Yep.
And here's what I say, heavily coloured by what I've learned, because I never used to know that either. What I now know is, your gut, right? It's this, in terms of the chakra system, it's the second energy center. Now, in the model that I use, the second energy center is about safety. It's about social connection. It's about ingestion. It's about, all of that stuff. Shame and suffering and worthlessness and all of those things end up in that center if it's blocked, or if it's not able to transmit energy properly. So if you are in that state of having a screwed up gut, which I have done, and you have an intuition, and it could really come from the divine, right? But your gut's in a knot. If it's something that's unknown and something that's new to you and something that's unfamiliar, which by default means it's a bit scary, and your gut is all, do you think your gut is going to say that you're safe to go there? It's going to say, no, you're not safe to go there. So your gut in that situation is not going to give you good advice. Your body, and I've had my body lead me up the garden path because I didn't understand this, that you only get good information from your body, from your intuition, from your gut, and ultimately from the unified field when you are coherent. So you got to be balanced, you got to be aligned, you got to be centered, whatever words you use. And, I think I said pretty much, if you're stressed, whatever intuition you have, it might be true, but you won't really know until you master your stress response. Calm down, get centered, connect, and then you will know. As soon as people connect, they know immediately, because it's only us getting all tied up and getting scared. That, and fundamentally, everything comes from fear. Okay, I'm making vast generalizations, but I know people know what I'm talking about. When you're scared, the information gets scrambled. And you may very well say no to something that you would say yes to if you were calm. And you might still have a feeling once you were calm and centered and connected to the, the unified field and the information that's instantly available there. You might think, oh, gee, that's a bit of a challenge. But it's exciting. It's unknown. Okay, I'm going to take this leap. And you really know it. You know when you just really know. But if you're in fear, you're just going to lock up and not be able to flow with it. So that's what I now understand about it, that I need to be coherent before I'm going to get good information. And of course, the skill that I've been developing for about 13 months now means that I am much better at staying coherent than I used to be. Because instead of having a super highway to incoherence and lack and I can't do this and this is not happening and, you know, whatever else in my brain, I am really laying down some pretty strong neural connections, and my chemistry has changed, my biological conditioning has changed, and I'm now much more conditioned to love and joy, which was this unknown thing to me a year ago. Believe it or not. It's like, really? Yeah, it was a word that I get angry about. Don't talk to me about freaking joy. I don't know what it is. I can't do it. Don't talk to me about fun. I'd get angry, really. So, you know, it's been a huge change for me of the best possible sort.
So you're talking about removing these filters in the basic aspects of your biology in terms of these stress responses and so on and so forth. So you're developing this coherence and the ability for the information to flow, you know, between these neural ganglia around your body as you're talking about them. So from a context of understanding. I'm interested now in the filters that actually exist in these mind levels once you're coherent. So my observation of people is that they can become pretty coherent, and they become so full of fixed attitudes and you know, so like they become so tied into that.
They get very full of bullshit because they're bought into whatever it is that, you know, it's like they're evangelical about it.
Yeah, and whatever has actually taken them, you know, to the place that they've been, and my goodness, there's lots of gratitude for it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Talk a little bit about your experience of all of that.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think the first thing I want to say, it's actually an observation that I've made of Joe Dispenza himself, because, you know, he is now this massive rock star and everybody adores him, and rightly so, because he's this amazing human being. And what I'm starting to realize now, as I am really starting to connect with the unified field, is this: you cannot be full of shit if you go into the unified field with an honest intention to connect, because you're going to meet yourself, you're going to meet your stuff, and whatever you need to know and move through, whatever life has brought up for you, you're going to see it and you're going to face it, because you're in a place of unity and love and connectedness and truth. And so the last thing you want to do is hold on to some lie or some belief structure or something that you are so fond of, but it's limiting you. And that's what I find is, and that's why I sort of look at him and think, you know, why doesn't it go to his head? It doesn't go to his head because when he goes into the unified field, he's just as naked as I am, because he's facing himself. And he says, you know, I have to overcome myself every day. Some days it's easy, some days it's really hard. And I understand that now. You just can't lie about anything. And you can't be in resistance. You can't be hanging on to something that's precious and dear to you that you're invested in. And you don't want to, because you want this wholeness and this connectedness so much. I want it more than sleep. I want it more than, you know, anything. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's my answer to that. But yeah, I do see people getting very invested. You know, it's like the sort of classical thing that we're fairly familiar with, you know, the older doctors, for example, saying this is how it is, and the new ones come along and they try to say, look, here's new information, here's something else, and they say, no, we don't want to know. And you can even say to them, but look, this actually is true, and what you're teaching in your classroom doesn't work anymore.
You're talking about, you know, going naked back into the field. So this is a really wonderful, you know, way of observing the situation, and it's a way around being lost in these delusional constructs of the mind or minds. So whether they're, you know, the emotional or whatever. Yes. And so just talk through what it means for Maddie to actually, you know, confront yourself day after day, and to actually go back there and seek this coherence that will lead you past these filters.
I love this question. This is brilliant. So like I said before, some days it's just really easy because nothing particularly got triggered up the day before. And, you know, I used to wonder when I heard Joe say about living one day, one lifetime in a day. And then I started to realize that every day, having gone into the field and done something, that I was coming out a different person. And all I had to do was live the best of that person for a day, because the next day I was going to be different again. And I really see this now. I really observe this now. Every day I'm somebody else. And so to go into the unified field, perhaps dealing with the fact that, you know, there's some things in my body that I am very consciously creating epigenetic changes by changing the state of being that I have held for most of my life, because it was my programming, and I recognize what it's created in my body, because the hormones of stress push the buttons for disease. And if you can push the button for disease, you can also push the button for health. And I'm doing that. And the really, you know, I say it like it's easy, the really interesting part of that process for me has actually been recognizing just how much fear I have lived in my entire freaking life. And, you know, and so some days, if it comes on, that isn't right. If my body starts running the old program, that's a more accurate way of saying it, that will tend to happen in the afternoon or the evening. So there's a physiological circadian thing going on, but whatever, if it happens, it's likely to happen then. And if I happen to have time, or even if I don't, you know, I'll often take a moment to think, what is this about? Now, I don't, you know, go into analysis paralysis and try to fix it. What I do sometimes feel the need to do is to think, what am I really feeling here? And what am I really reacting to, or what's the real question? Really, I want to know what's the real question, because once I got the question, the answer is a piece of cake. Really, answers are nothing. The question is everything. So I might spend some time, and that's right, I did this maybe last week. I actually had to go into quite an incoherent state to really understand what I was afraid of. But at the end of that time, I thought, I now need to eat dinner. And I cannot eat dinner in the state that I'm in, because my gut is shut down, and it doesn't need to have food shoved into it when it's shut down, because I'm in fear. So I did some very conscious heart-centered breathing and stuff to change that, because it was necessary just for my physicality. The next day, and I did shift my state. It took me some time, because this is really deep stuff we're talking about. The next day when I went into the field, there is a physical process that I have learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza, which allows me to literally draw stuck energy up out of the lower three centers of my body and push it up to the heart. And once it reaches the heart, it goes up to the brain. And I now feel that. I now physically feel it. Took me a while to really master the breath, but, you know, I can push energy out of the stuck place in my body and up into my head, and, you know, up into the field even. It releases, it goes. So that day, when I was doing that part of my meditation, my intention was that I am pulling out this fear. And when you know what it is that you are facing in yourself, you do that with an enormous amount of passion and determination, because that's what it takes to shift that energy, because it's been stuck there a long time. So I do that. And that actually helps to create coherence in the brain, believe it or not, because they've measured it. You know, they run the strip chart, and you can see all the little whatnots going up and down together instead of its sixes and sevens. So doing the breaths, believe it or not, creates coherence. And then after that, the process that comes after that, you just go deeper. And, you know, the conscious mind that is operating like you and me in beta brain waves, which is fine, we need that, turns off. As you slow down your brain waves, you get into alpha, and alpha is like, you know, light hypnosis or sitting in front of the television zoned out. It's the sort of sleepy, you know, you start to go into alpha when you're getting sleepy at night and you're getting ready to go to bed. But it's not just any old alpha that you create in these processes. You create coherent alpha. So the different compartments in the brain start to talk to each other. And then as you go deeper, with practice, I know what VITA feels like now. It's between sleep and awake. And I'm still getting practiced at staying awake while my body's asleep, because sometimes I drift off. It does depend if I'm a bit more tired than others. But I go deep and I get to the point where all of that fear or reaction or whatever it is simply doesn't exist anymore. It's just all of those networks are turned off. That the whole brain has gone quiet, and you're in the operating system of the autonomic nervous system, and you're connected to the unified field. Today, I was literally in no time. There was no before and after. I was getting instructions to go as far out, because it was it's firing the cerebellum to spatial. And there was nowhere to go. It was just all here and all now. It was like everything was in this little, I could stick it on the tip of my finger, but it was the whole of time. It was just this incredible. And I say incredible with all this energy, but it was so still. It was indescribable. Everything goes away. You cease being a person. You cease being a body. Now, I could still feel my body, but I've heard lots of people say they have these experiences and they lose their body. Their body's gone. So, the motor cortex turns off, and the parietal lobe and the temporal lobe and the occipital lobe and the visual cortex, it all turns off. The frontal lobe goes to sleep. Even the emotional brain gets damped down, and you're just there. And in that place, you're nobody. Everything falls away. All the personality, the things you own, the places you go, the job you've got to do tomorrow, and the place you went yesterday, and the thing, it just all goes, vanishes. And in that space, you can create anything, because you're in the space where everything exists. All the possibilities are there, and you just align yourself with them. It's very hard to describe, but I think I'm doing reasonably well.
I think I understand all those things you're talking about, and it's lovely to.
You have to experience it. You really do. You really do. It's beyond description.
Yeah, but that passion that you've got for it it's a wonderful way of actually getting that message out, Maddie. So I appreciate that. Now, tell me, other than the advice to people to become coherent and
yes, it's not very specific, is it?
Well, it is and it isn't, and to also be able to gain some mastery over these, brainwave states and so on that you're talking about. So, doing that very intense meditative work that you are obviously doing, so like you've given us a great sort of starter in terms of, that people should go and seek out this kind of work. But what would your guidance to people be today?
Right now,
what's going on at the moment?
So right now, the most accessible. No, I got to stop that. That's not how I need to. Not what I need to say at all. Right now is to bring your attention right now. Just to start to notice, I don't know where this is going, but it's going somewhere. This is a stream of consciousness. Bring your attention, start to notice how often your brain, your thoughts flit off into, what's coming tomorrow? What am I doing next? When am I going to have my next cup of coffee? Or how often your thoughts flit off into yesterday. And you really have to start paying attention, because, and by the way, I have to go sideways for a minute. The kind of intense meditation practice that I'm doing is something that I had no clue I was capable of a year ago. So if you listen to me raving about this wonderful experience that I'm having every day and think, I can't do that. If I had listened to me a year ago, I would have said, I can't do that too. So don't be put off. Don't be thinking, well, please, I prefer you don't think that that's a reason to exclude yourself. The point is, I'm translating something, that's why I'm stopping. The point is, there is a union between heart and mind. In whichever way you do it, that's where the peace is. There's such a, I want you to have this experience, but I don't know how to tell you without sounding like I'm preaching some gospel of whatever. because you've heard me rave enough to know that you're going to check out what I've been talking about or not. Today, I would say, go to YouTube, look up Dr. Joe, listen a bit, and YouTube Joe Dispenza meditation, because there are some beautiful, you will find GoLove20, GOLOV-20. You will find the mutation. There's a mutation that came out. It's called You Inspire Me. It's amazing. I did it yesterday. It blew me to pieces in the most beautiful way. Look up the Heart Math Institute, and they have a tools archive, and they talk a lot about heart breathing, and they have little 2 or 3 minute videos to follow, to practice, to try out. But whatever you do, realize that if you've been in stress and fear for most of your life, it's going to take some time and some practice to become somebody else who's not got a normal baseline that I'm in stress and fear, and particularly that you probably don't even realize that you've been in stress and fear most of your life. You didn't, like me, you got no idea how stressed you were. So I think my suggestion, my advice, my what to do is pay attention, because nothing changes until you notice something and think, hell, if my thoughts create my reality and this is what I'm thinking, because your thoughts lead to feelings, right? And your feelings lead straight back to more thoughts, and round the loop goes. And if you condition yourself into thinking the thoughts of sorrow forever, then you're just going to keep on being sad and it feels normal. If you start paying attention to what you're thinking and feeling, and you just choose one that you think, oh man, I've got to change that. But to change it, I've got to notice it. That's the first thing. And secondly, you've got to know what you want it to be instead. Because we get stuck on, oh, I've got this thing and I need to heal it and it's a problem and I need to make it better. No, you don't. What you need to do is know who you want to be instead. And I'm constantly raving on about this. Because you can analyze the problem until the cows come home. But who do you want to be? If you focus on who you want to be, who you are when you're not being that is going to become really obvious to you anyway. And that really is, that's what I do every day. Notice who I'm being and decide if I like it or not.
Yeah, no, look, that's perfect. Wonderful advice. So
thank you. It's not evangelical about a particular technique. Which I think is important, because everybody, you're right, everybody has their own path.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, Mariana Kanagaiser, who I'm doing this summit with, she and I were doing some coaching stuff and putting some programs together, and you know, we were coming up against these sorts of things that you're talking about, and I said to her, look, I'll probably have a solution for you by Friday, because that's when I'm going to be a Buddha. And
right, okay.
And anyway, so we decided we'd write a book between us called Buddha by Friday, and what you would do.
Excellent.
And fundamentally, it's what you're talking about, which is decide what it is that you want. What is the experience that I want to have? And
who am I when I'm having it?
To be, and that's the whole.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
the concept of Buddha by Friday.
That's the important thing for me, though. And this was the gap. So I'm not, again, this might be something that is encapsulated in that statement, what do I want for you? But for me, it wasn't. So I want to pull this out, because, you know, little flags gone up in my head. For me, it wasn't enough to know what I wanted, because what I wanted seemed and felt and was utterly impossible. And for me, to bridge the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be, I didn't understand that I was being a certain version of me here. And to get to here, I didn't need my external circumstances to change. I needed to become the person who was here while I was still there. Absolutely. And I did not understand that. And it was a massive gap in my understanding that I needed to become somebody else.
Yeah, it's absolutely, look, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's just such wonderful, you know, way of observing this that you're making here. So thank you.
Yeah, it's what I love to do. I love to explain this stuff, and I love to help people work out. I love to help people connect with how it actually works out in reality in 3D. It's not reality, how it works out in 3 dimensions for them. Nitty gritty. Now, rubber hit the road. Let's actually make this practical and applicable now.
Yep.
And I love doing that because I do it really well. And, you know, I love being able to spend 2 or 3 hours with somebody and they go away and they run with it. I may never see them again because it's enough. Or, you know, I see them in a couple of months and they've done a whole lot of stuff because they've gone away and they've used it. And I love that.
Lovely. So you're saying you're doing these lives and that type of thing, so there's plenty of ways that people can contact with you. And, so let me be specific. At about, ideally, but never exactly on the dot, at 8:38 a.m. in the morning, New Zealand time, I aim to go live. It's generally a little bit before or a little bit after, for 22 minutes. Again, sometimes more, sometimes less. And it really is about asking those frontal lobe questions. The frontal lobe questions are open-ended questions, and they get you off the problem and onto the solution. What if I could be like this? How would it feel if I was this person? What would it be like if, you know, who would I be? Those questions that make you come into creation instead of, I got a problem. And every day we talk about that. And if somebody's asked a burning question or made a comment that's got a zing in it, and I think I can answer that, then the live will be about that. And sometimes there isn't any of that. It's like, well, what are you doing today at a unified field? And something always arrives. And people, you know, they come on live and sometimes I respond to them live, but, you know, you can only do that so much before you completely lose your thread of consciousness. But I respond because it's not so big yet that I can't do that. And I have seen people completely transform their lives just by doing that. Because it's incremental. It takes time to make change. But the people who come on, and they don't just listen and go, oh, you're wonderful, which is lovely when people say, oh, you're wonderful, but they don't just listen. They actually take it away and they apply it. And I watch them change. And I can feel the change from the way they write. And I love that. And some of them come into my, I've got a coaching group. So what happens there is that there is, every week I do just a training live, and it's, you know, lately I ping them all to see who's on, and if they're on, we come on and we have a conversation, and it's awesome. So that, you know, they're getting bonus. But every week there's a training live, and again, that's downloaded from source. I don't just say, oh, we'll talk about this week. No, it's like, what's in the field, and I tune into the energy of the heart field, and kaboom, I get the information. And then once a month, we actually have a face-to-face, Zoom, face-to-face workshop. And so, you know, we get to do more of this practical creation stuff. And I love the heart field. It's awesome. It's a very special space. And occasionally, not very often, but occasionally, somebody will put up their hand to work with me one-on-one. And I like to do that too. Okay. Well, look, we'll have all of these links and that sort of thing on your website, so people will be able to find it.
Yep.
And yeah, look, all strength to your arm, Maddie. It's wonderful to speak with you, and
lots of fun.
Yeah, go forward and enjoy it. Yeah.
I am. That is the wonderful thing. Right now has never actually been more wonderful for me. I'm not constantly thinking, oh, but I'm not getting this and that's not happening. And because I'm not in that, you know, back there or pushing forward to there and saying, it's not here yet, and so keeping myself in lack, of course I'm seeing more stuff arrive because I'm now much more in the state of wholeness and completeness and havingness and ultimately gratitude, which is the ultimate state of receivership. And so things are starting to come, which is really quite strange. But the nicest thing is I'm no longer really looking for them.
Okay.
Yeah. When you become, let me see if I can unpack a little bit of what didn't make sense before. So you can't go into the unified field as a personality. You actually have to lose yourself entirely. And you can't go into the unified field as somebody who is a husband or a workplace role or a teacher or a scientist or anything. You have to lose who you are as a person. And all of the things in your life, your computer, the storm, the house, that, for me, the things that I can or can't buy, whatever, all of that has to go away, because there's nothing material and there's no people and there's no matter in the unified field. There's no places. It's a place of thought entirely. So you have to forget about where you're going to go tomorrow. And you have to forget about what you're going to do in an hour, because there's no time either. So all of that goes away. And when it's like through the eye of the needle, it really is. And all that stuff's got to fall off. And when you go into that place where you are nobody, no person, no thing, no where, and in no time, just on the other side of that place, you become everybody, every person, everything, everywhere, and in every time. And that's what I was talking about before. You just become all of it. And the thing about being all of it, which is totally indescribable, but you just have to take my word for it, because I've been there now, I know what this is like, is when you are all of it, you're so whole, you can't want anything. It's not possible. The only way for me to want something when I'm in that space is for me to get out of that space. And it's too beautiful. I don't want to leave. I'm so complete. I don't need anything. And so that degree of wholeness is now becoming more innate and more normal for me. It's a little bit easier for me to remember. And so I'm less concerned about the things I haven't been able to do or that haven't arrived. It just, to be worried about that, I'd have to give up this feeling. And I don't want to. So that's how that works. And it's the greatest gift that I've ever been able to give myself. And it's the greatest gift that I can ever help anybody else give themselves, to be that whole.
Cool. Well, Maddie, thank you so much. And we'll undoubtedly talk again. Our paths will cross, I'm sure.
I expect so. Thank you for being such a generous host. And thank you, everybody, for watching and participating. It is wonderful to greet you out of time and say thank you for giving us your attention, because where you put your energy is where you put your attention is where you put your energy. And so you've gifted us your energy.